4 months ago, Meghan Markle signed a podcast deal with Lemonada Media, creating a buzz with the re-release of her old Archetypes podcast and the promise of a dynamic new podcast. Meghan expressed her excitement in a statement saying, "I'm so eager to be able to share it soon, and I'm overjoyed to be joining the Lemonada family." However, since the announcement, there's been no sign of this new podcast. This silence echoes the fate of Meghan and Harry's 2021 collaboration with Ethic, a financial service company focused on environmental, social, and governance investing. At the time, Meghan was enthusiastic about the partnership. "From the world I come from, you don't talk about investing, right?" she said. "You don't have the luxury to invest. That sounds so fancy." She explained that their friends introduced them to Ethic and that she was inspired by their values. "My husband's been saying for years, gosh, don't you wish there was a place where if your values were aligned like this, you could put your money to that same sort of thing," she added. Despite this initial enthusiasm, Ethic has seemingly faded into obscurity. There have been no updates or mentions of the company in recent years. Similarly, Meghan's new podcast with Lemonada Media appears to be another project that's quietly disappeared. Interestingly, Meghan's former friend Gloria Steinem was recently featured in an episode of Lemonada's hit show Wiser Than Me, but the interview was conducted by Julia Louis-Dreyfus, not Meghan. This has led some to speculate that Meghan has a habit of making announcements without following through on the actual projects. Some have suggested that the announcement of the podcast was a strategic move to shift the narrative. By linking Meghan and podcast to Lemonada Media, the search engines would divert attention from any negative comments or controversies surrounding her. However, it seems unlikely that she intended to produce more podcasts. Recent reports indicate that Meghan's podcast with Lemonada has been postponed until 2025 due to conflicting schedules with another project, a new cooking and lifestyle show that she's reportedly focusing on. This delay raises questions about whether the podcast will ever materialise, much like other projects associated with her and Harry's Archewell organisation. Archewell itself has come under scrutiny. Some critics argue that it's a facade, suggesting that it lacks substance and transparency. There are even calls for the IRS to investigate the organisation for potential financial irregularities, including money laundering and tax fraud. The pattern of high-profile announcements followed by silence or abandonment is becoming a hallmark of Meghan's ventures. Whether it's the podcast with Lemonada Media or the partnership with Ethic, the initial excitement often dissipates without any substantial follow-up. In the case of the podcast, the postponement to 2025 has only fueled scepticism. Some believe that Meghan's more interested in the publicity generated by these announcements than in the actual execution of the projects. This perception is further reinforced by the lack of tangible outcomes from her previous ventures. The pattern suggests a possible strategy of using high-profile announcements to control the narrative and generate positive media coverage. However, without delivering on these promises, the strategy risks backfiring, leading to increased scrutiny and criticism. Ultimately, the absence of Meghan's new podcast and the silence surrounding other projects like Ethic raises questions about the authenticity and commitment behind these ventures. As time goes on, the discrepancy between the announcements and the actual outcomes becomes more glaring, potentially undermining Meghan's credibility and reputation in the long run. Whether the podcast with Lemonada Media will ever see the light of day remains to be seen, but for now, it joins a growing list of Meghan's unfulfilled promises.